Fire was our first architect. Before code, before calculation, before standards or testing. It was fire that taught matter how to endure. Clay became ceramic, wood became charcoal, stone became pigment. Everything we now measure began in that heat of transformation. And yet today, under regulation, fire is the element most forbidden. What once gave us knowledge, we now legislate to exclude. In Australia, our building codes are written in gradients of fear. BAL 12.5, BAL 19, BAL 29. Each one a measure of distance from catastrophe. And beyond 29, we ask for materials that will not burn. But the code says nothing about how materials remember. That's where the ancient technique of yakisugi finds its paradox. The char layer, born from the flame itself, made timber durable, resistant, alive with history. It isn't disqualified, it's reinterpreted. CSIRO trials shows it clearly. The char slows combustion. At roughly 0.3 of a millimeter per minute, fire inscribes its protection. But protection isn't immunity. Unassisted charred timber can't meet a higher BAL zone, not because it lacks reason, but because the law now asks for non-combustible truth. Yet the door isn't closed. When the structure beneath is fire rated, like cementatious board, steel batten, or compliant sheeting, yakisugi can return as surface, as memory, as visible intelligence. The substrate carries the regulation, the timber carries the story. At Plonc.studio, we refuse the binary of allowed and disallowed. We work in the in-between where a material's intelligence is not erased by its legal limitation, but translated. Yakisugi survive as a visible poetry. Porcelain continues it in mineral form. Both are born of combustion. One ephemeral, the other eternal. Each a reflection of fire's authorship. The porcelain tile fired above 1200 degrees shares the same intelligence the charred board holds at 400. Both remember through transformation. The lab and the workshop aren't opposites. They're two sides of the same inquiry. One measures, the other listens. And behind the numbers, the bow ratings, the test data is the same human desire to preserve life through understanding. And in the charred surface of timber, we see that same equation. Craft as science before science, to endure by learning from the flame. Bachelard called fire the ultra-living element. To design with fire is to accept duality, that nothing endures without first being altered. Today, that alteration is chemical, cultural, and regulatory. We can't return to pre-industrial innocence, but we can reclaim the intelligence of those processes. Craft and code can cohabit if we design between them. Fire, regulation, and design aren't enemies. They are dialects in one conversation about survival. From that dialogue comes geolux, geological luxury, surfaces that remind their making. In porcelain, fire is no longer a threat. It's a teacher. It turns clay to stone, color to strata, surface to record. Geolux doesn't compete with yakisugi. It completes it. Both show that intelligence reside not in perfection, but in transformation. Plonc.studio stands in this intersection between the material and the regulatory, the poetic and the empirical. We speak for the intelligence of surfaces charred, vitrified, or composite. Materials that remember their trials, that carry history in their structure, that resist fashion by embodying consequence. Every law, every rating, every test is not an end but a translation. Fire remains our first collaborator, not a spectacle, not as danger, but as measures. Because in the memory of fire, we rediscover the intelligence of making. Plonk.